faithfully delivering value, interpreting great books from around the world. Hello, this is Sally's Book Talk. Today, the book we're exploring is Life During the War of Resistance Era. On August 13th, 1937, the Battle of Shanghai erupted. On November 12th, Shanghai fell, ending the battle. From this day forward until August 15th, 1945, when Japan surrendered unconditionally, Shanghai citizens endured over 7 years of occupation. What was occupied Shanghai like, and how did people live through it? Today's book, Life During the War of Resistance Era, reveals the diverse realities of wartime Shanghai. The author Chen Kunren was a renowned traditional Chinese medicine practitioner in the 1930s to 40s. We previously covered his book, Life in the Silver Dollar Era, which chronicled old Shanghai's transformation through currency. This book details the author's first-hand experiences in Shanghai during the 8-Year War. Famed publisher Shen Chengwen, former SDX Joint Publishing head, remarked, "This book opened the eyes of a Shanghai street kid like me back then." With 220,000 characters across 18 chapters, it spans from the Battle of Shanghai to victory, capturing both the era's essence and ordinary lives, forming a vivid wartime tapestry. I'll examine wartime Shanghai life through 3 lenses: political, economic, and cultural aspects. Note, when war erupted, the author relocated to Shanghai's international settlement. Thus, this history primarily reflects settlement life. Let's begin with Part 1, Political Life. The author divides wartime political life into 3 phases. Phase 1, August 13th, 1937, Shanghai battle outbreak, to March 1940, Long Jinwei's puppet regime establishment. Settlement life remained relatively stable then, as Japan had just taken Shanghai, while Western powers still controlled the settlement. The Japanese needed time to understand and consolidate Shanghai's political factions to establish control. This political vacuum created opportunities for collaborators to rise. Japan's early Shanghai recruits were mostly notorious gangsters who stopped at nothing. The most notorious was Chang Yu-ching, an illiterate, obese man commanding over 1,000 disciples, thieves and kidnappers. Chang also operated a massive bathhouse with 300 to 400 daily patrons, grandly named Grandview Garden. During the Battle of Shanghai, Chang defected to the Japanese, ordering disciples to launch signal flares, guiding enemy attacks. After Shanghai's occupation, Chang became a Japanese favorite. At the New Asia Hotel, Japanese military HQ, he maintained an office, wielding arrogant influence. Some intellectuals also chose to become Japanese lapdogs. For instance, intellectual Yu Daxiang made a living through tabloids, blackmailing elites with exposés. Even opium traffickers paid him monthly stipends. After war erupted, Yu leveraged his Japanese education to serve the military, becoming a favorite. Later, Yu offended Chang and was murdered by Chang's disciples. This news caused a minor sensation. The author notes it reveals how treacherous collaborationist relationships were. Phase 2, March 1940, Wang Jingwei's puppet regime, to December 1941, Pacific War outbreak. By October 1938, Japan seized Guangzhou and Wuhan, overextending its front. Unable to crush the Kuomintang government, relocated to Chongqing. Japan thus shifted strategy, attempting to lure the Kuomintang into surrender. They sought a presentable figurehead. To establish a puppet regime, Wang Jingwei, former KMT vice chairman, was ideal. His defection would fracture the resistance. In May 1939, Long arrived in Shanghai for secret talks with Japan. Soon, he publicly telegraphed Chiang Kai-shek surrendering to Japan, forming his puppet government. Now, those thuggish gangsters seemed unfit for legitimacy. Wang prioritized party work experience when recruiting collaborators, having handled KMT affairs himself. After Shanghai's fall, over 100 KMT branch members remained underground. But these men knew only party work, struggling financially. Wang unleashed financial incentives, so this group collectively defected. Moreover, to bolster Wang Jingwei's strength, the Japanese handed over the infamous Number 76 spy organization to him. Number 76 was established in 1939 as a collaborator spy agency, specializing in killings, kidnappings, and such. It was nicknamed Number 76 because it was located at Number 76 Justfield Road in Shanghai at the time, which is today's Hengdu Road. And shortly after Number 76's establishment, the author heard big news. At the intersection of Jing'an 4th Road and Great Western Road, today's Nanjing West Road and Yan'an West Road, was the boundary between the settlement and non-settlement areas.
There was a checkpoint there. One day, several cars came from outside the settlement. Police approached for routine checks, but people in the cars opened fire, wounding over a dozen officers and killing an Indian constable. The shooters were from Number 76, and thus its existence became known.
In March 1940, Wang Jingwei formally established his puppet government, and Number 76 became a key pillar of his regime. It also had an official name, the Central Executive Committee, Special Operations Committee of the Chinese Kuomintang.
Wang Jingwei often used Number 76 to carry out assassinations and eliminate dissidents.
Since many assassination targets were hiding in the settlement, it became unsafe. Newspapers reported near-daily killings. The public was terrified of Number 76. Journalists and intellectuals promoting resistance were prime targets. If someone hid away, Number 76 would investigate their families thoroughly. With family safety threatened, the person couldn't stay hidden. KMT party, government, and military personnel in Shanghai were also targets. For example, before the war, Shanghai used the KMT-issued Fabi currency. After Shanghai's occupation, the KMT's Central Bank and Farmers Bank moved into the settlement, continuing to issue Fabi. Wang Jingwei's government issued its own currency, the Central Reserve Bank note, to wage a financial war against the KMT, but people generally refused to use it. So Number 76 entered the settlement, ordering employees of the Central Bank and Farmers Bank to line up. Facing the wall, they were then executed en masse. Besides killings, Number 76 kidnapped for ransom to amass a slush fund. Oh my damn. Initially, they'd label kidnapped victims as resistance fighters. Later, they simply kidnapped anyone with money. Many of the author's fellow doctors were kidnapped. Most paid ransoms, with only a few escaping. Another industrialist named Feng Yexian, a pioneer in China's chemical industry, developed the country's earliest toothpaste. In July 1940, Fang was ambushed by Number 76 while going to work. His bodyguard was killed, he was abducted, and executed for resisting. Later, Fang's family paid a huge sum to retrieve his body. The arrogance of Number 76! This only subsided after the Pacific War erupted. December 1941, Pacific War outbreak, to August 1945, victory, marks the third phase covered in this book. After the Pacific War began, Japan formally declared war on Western powers, fully taking over the international settlement. Starting in 1943, Westerners living in the settlement were interned in concentration camps. From then on, Japan became more politically assertive, reducing reliance on Wang's puppet government. But they intensified direct control over civilians, arresting anyone slightly suspected of resistance without question. Learning he was on the blacklist of suspects, the author dared not stay home. He arranged 3 or 4 temporary residences. After seeing patients daily, he'd repeatedly check for tails before choosing one to stay. Additionally, Japan forced Chinese men aged 18 to 30 into self-defense corps, self-guard units, where members took turns standing guard. Typically, posts were at street corners to monitor passers-by. Each member carried thick ropes. If resistance activity occurred, they'd cordon off the area, halting all traffic until suspects were caught. Once, when no suspect was caught for days in one area, locals couldn't buy groceries for just as long. All right, that covers Shanghai's political landscape during the war. The era's turbulence and shifting powers plunged ordinary lives into terror. An old saying goes, "Better a dog in peace than a human in war." This truly reflected their reality. So, what was the livelihood and economy like in Shanghai under such political circumstances? In the second part, we'll introduce life from an economic perspective. War disrupts normal production and distribution, leading to shortages of supplies. At that time, most basic supplies in Shanghai, like food and coal, were transported from outside. When war came, transportation was greatly affected, naturally causing shortages of these supplies. For example, coal used as fuel for power generation was scarce. Thermal power plants struggled to operate normally, forcing them to restrict residential electricity use. Around 1941, the fifth year of the war, the Japanese mandated that each household could use at most 7 kilowatt hours of electricity per month. Exceeding this limit resulted in power cuts. What does using 7 kilowatt hours in a month mean? Suppose a 50-watt bulb is used for only 5 hours a day. 7 kilowatt hours wouldn't even last a month. Now, for the author's family, 7 kilowatt hours lasted only 7 days. They only turned on lights during dinner, using candles at other times.
Handles in the market were quickly snapped up, and neon lights and street lamps were all turned off.
Once extremely prosperous, Shanghai became a world of darkness. To cope with rising prices, some well-connected people started hoarding supplies, especially scarce items like milk powder and tin plate. Prices rose daily, and those who hoarded them were reluctant to sell. For instance, a UA opera actress collected tin plate everywhere. Eventually, her house was piled high with tin plate. She even dismantled her bed and slept on the tin plate. Many made fortunes by hoarding supplies. The author had a friend named Yuan who ran a pharmacy. On the eve of the war, some foreign dealers of Western medicine sold him their stock at low prices, including just quinine for treating malaria. He hoarded 800 cases of it. After the war broke out, Mr. Yuan indeed made a huge fortune. Just how big was it? The book doesn't specify, but it provides a very interesting detail. One day, a fire broke out below Mr. Yuan's home and was spotted by a sex worker soliciting nearby. This woman had been helped by Mr. Yuan before. She smashed his window to warn him to run, saving his entire family. Afterwards, Mr. Yuan gave her 2 cases of quinine as a reward. She later opened a pharmacy and quickly became wealthy. For supplies that were too scarce to obtain, what could be done? They resorted to making counterfeits, especially fake Western goods. After Japan declared war on Western nations, after occupying the settlement, Western goods became scarce in Shanghai, leading to more counterfeits, many selling quite well. For instance, many Shanghainese smoked British cigarettes. 2 popular brands had white and green tinfoil-lined packs, nicknamed White Tin Pack and Green Tin Pack. Companies imitated these cigarettes in appearance and flavor, selling well. Even respectable folks carried a pack. Counterfeits flooded storefronts. Long absent foreign liquor suddenly reappeared, seemingly premium, but opening a bottle revealed a strong ethanol smell. Only the bottles were genuine. The liquor inside was pure fake. As the war dragged on, shortages worsened and hoarding grew harder. Meanwhile, currency rapidly devalued, making hoarding hard assets like gold and US dollars crucial for preserving wealth. Gold shops thoughtfully offered personalized services to meet this demand.
Before this, Shanghai's gold bars weighed 10 taels each, prohibitively expensive, equivalent to decades of an average family's income.
So, gold shops introduced small bars, 1 tael each, peanut-sized. Over time, people nicknamed 10-tael bars big bars, and the small ones little yellow fish. But only a well-connected few could hoard goods or gold. Most citizens endured scarcity. For example, rice was scarce and prices spiked constantly, 3 to 5 times monthly at minimum, up to 7 or 8 times. Families with many children risked climbing Japanese barbed wire to fetch rice from rural areas. If unlucky, sentries beat them half dead with rifle butts and confiscated their rice. Later, settlement authorities required rice shops to sell fair price rice by household size. Quality varied from whole grain to broken rice or even rice powder, but it secured basic rations. But to save effort, race shops stipulated each person could only buy their own share, no family proxies. So, on rice sale days, crowds scrambled to queue. Police brutally beat rice-buying citizens to maintain order, yet people pushed on regardless. Poor sanitation allowed fleas to spread typhus during rice distribution. Crowded queues accelerated typhus spread. Many doctors contracted it from patients and died quickly. Within a week, several of the author's colleagues died. He treated patients wrapped in raincoats, terrified of fleas, yet couldn't shake his fear. Earlier, we described wartime Shanghai's economic devastation, but some industries thrived because of the war. Take dance halls. Pre-war settlement had a dozen. Post-invasion, dozens more appeared. They operated nightly dances, afternoon tea dances with refreshments, and even lunchtime hedonistic escape. Patrons spent entire days dancing, still craving more. Some halls added morning dances, crowds cha-cha'd at dawn. High-end Cantonese restaurants also multiplied rapidly. Entrepreneur Zhang Biao from Guangdong opened many Cantonese eateries, all featuring Hua in their names, like Jinghua, Xinghua, Renghua, Meihua, dubbed Hua character restaurants by locals as premium dining symbols. The author called this countertrend warped prosperity. War bred despair, driving people to seek quick escapes. Dance halls offered affordable, endless distraction, thus their popularity. Top halls charged $1 for 3 dances. Budget spots offered up to 16 dances per dollar. $1. What did that mean? In Life in the Silver Dollar Era, the author noted a 1930s meal, twice-cooked pork, shredded beef, braised fish, soup, and wine cost $3. Thus, $1 for half a day of dancing wasn't expensive. This summarizes Shanghai's wartime economy. Widespread ruin while ordinary people struggled for rice.
On the other hand, the war created warped prosperity in certain industries like dance halls.
Scholars also found that before Japan occupied the settlement in 1941, massive capital inflow briefly created prosperity there. But in the perilous war environment, this capital was highly speculative. Get in quick, get out quick. After the settlement fell, this prosperity vanished. This was the face of Shanghai's economic life during the war. Against this political and economic backdrop, national humiliation and personal grief caused deep anguish, making cultural activities vital to Shanghainese life. In this third part, we'll focus on wartime Shanghai's cultural life. The most important cultural activity for Shanghainese was watching stage plays and films. With lower production costs and simpler formats than films, many invested in staging plays, leading to constant new productions. For example, the novel Begonia by Qin Shouo tells how Peking opera performer Chu Haitang was persecuted by a warlord and driven to suicide. The novel began serialization in newspapers in January 1941 and was hugely popular. Luckily, it was adapted into a stage play in 1942. Audiences wept over the protagonist's tragedy. Combined with the era's oppressive atmosphere needing emotional release, the play became an instant sensation. Demand was so high they added shows continuously. Even with 2 rotating casts, they couldn't keep up. In 1943, the Begonia film adaptation broke box office records. This popularity drew Japanese scrutiny. After Begonia hit big, Japan's cultural ministry sent agents who saw the warlord as mocking Japanese troops, ordering a ban. Performances barely continued after explanations. In truth, theater was indeed a covert resistance propaganda front. For instance, the 1944 play Wen Tianshang was secretly orchestrated by the Chongqing-based Kuomintang government to strengthen resistance resolve. through Wynn's story. But the creators cleverly invited dozens of high-ranking Japanese officials to attend. The premiere was heavily promoted, claiming all East Asian peoples share patriotic fervor. In this regard, the Chinese and Japanese are no different. Those Japanese officials were tricked into thinking it made perfect sense. They even led the applause during the show, so the play ran for many performances without interference. But during this period, the news media rapidly declined. Before the Pacific War erupted in 1941, many newspapers could report the latest battlefield news in the settlement. But as the Kuomintang army suffered repeated defeats, to avoid crushing people's resistance spirit, papers like Shenbao developed subtle euphemisms for war reports. And, for example, when the Kuomintang army retreated after losing ground, the papers would say, "Our troops completed their mission. The position had no military value," or "advanced to concentrate elsewhere." Some newspapers took unconventional paths, good at using sensational headlines to grab readers. For instance, an evening paper called Shi Wi Yi Bao had provocative headlines, but 9 out of 10 were fictional, accusing Shanghai elites of collaborating with the enemy. It reported Japanese defeats, but sometimes dared to publish true news other papers avoided. After the Pacific War erupted, both serious major papers and gossip tabloids faced strict control. Those still promoting resistance were shut down. For example, a paper called Dame Wan Bao, founded by Americans, consistently upheld a strong anti-Japanese stance. Its reports were bold and direct. Every afternoon, it sold out instantly upon release, making it the most popular evening paper then. Later, several of its members were assassinated by Number 76. On the very day the Japanese occupied the settlement, it ceased publication. The founder of the aforementioned Shihui Yabao was also killed. Papers not shut down were fully taken over, becoming strongly pro-Japanese.
For instance, Shenbao was Shanghai's most influential paper. In 1937, the Japanese started Shin Shenbao to promote invasion policies. After the settlement was occupied, Shenbao was taken over and used almost exclusively Domei News Agency articles.
Domei News Agency spoke for the Japanese government, so Shenbao became even more pro-Japanese than Shin Shenbao, constantly touting Japanese victories and military prowess, infuriating readers. After controlling papers, the Japanese took over radio. All private stations were closed, and all privately held shortwave radios had to be surrendered. The author owned an advanced shortwave radio that could pick up stations worldwide. To deal with the surrender order, he took out and hid the parts of the shortwave radio, then put parts from an old radio into its shell to hand it in, finally slipping through the inspection. All right, that concludes part 3. During the war in Shanghai's culture, stage plays were popular, while the news media declined due to Japanese control. According to other scholars' research, many people at the time were enthusiastic about traditional art forms like Peking opera and Pingtan storytelling. The reality of foreign invasion led many to seek spiritual comfort in traditional Chinese arts. However, as the situation changed, people began noticing signs of Japan's impending defeat, such as the sharp drop in ships traveling between China and Japan. This showed Japan could no longer control the sea route, was passive in battle, and close to defeat. Soon after, one day near the end of 1944, the author suddenly found the road in front of his house under martial law. 8. The Japanese entered the racecourse, the horse racing venue at the time, to hold a memorial for fallen soldiers. The author heard crying inside. Attendees were dejected, a stark contrast to their arrogance when occupying the settlement years earlier. On August 7, 1945, the author learned from a Japanese newspaper in Shanghai that the U.S. had dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima. A few days later, news arrived that the Soviet Union declared war on Japan, and the U.S. dropped an atomic bomb on Nagasaki. On the evening of August 10th. As the author was about to sleep, he got a sudden call from a friend saying Japan would accept the Potsdam Declaration from China, the US, Britain, etc., preparing to surrender. Hearing this long-awaited news, the author ignored the pitch darkness and ran downtown to investigate. He saw crowds filling the streets, shouting, cheering, singing, dancing, many shops hoisting Chinese flags, and some yelling, "Down with Japanese imperialism." The author entered a restaurant packed with people. The owner was giving out free beer to everyone. With too many people and not enough glasses, the author grabbed a big ladle to scoop beer straight from the barrel. A few days later, newspapers widely reported Japan's formal surrender. The author felt a flicker of fear about a pre-surrender massacre, but deafening victory fireworks outside dispelled his worries. And so the author's life during the War of Resistance era drew to a close. All right, that concludes our introduction to the main content of Life During the War of Resistance era. Based on author Chen Kunran's diaries, this book recounts daily life in occupied Shanghai from an ordinary citizen's perspective. While some question certain memoir details, the book undeniably offers a unique perspective for historical research on the war period. Historians consider it an essential text for understanding everyday life in wartime Shanghai. Some figures and events in the book also appear elsewhere, like in Memoirs of the Bracelet Shadow Pavilion by Bao Tianchao, a popular fiction writer during China's late Qing and early Republican era. Additionally, drama theorist Qi Rushan's memoir, Memoirs of Qi Rushan, details wartime Beijing. For a more comprehensive wartime life history, consider reading these two books as well. That's our exploration of Life During the War of Resistance era. Reading notes are below the audio. Until next time.